Imagine crossing the Aurora Bridge at dusk, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, your heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. That was me, Marcus Hayes, gripping the steering wheel as my wife Sabrina sat in the passenger seat with our 2-year-old daughter Luna fast asleep in her car seat behind us. We'd left our mid-century Fremont home 15 minutes earlier, but the tension in the car made every red light feel like an interrogation. Tonight was my mother's 58th birthday gala and art and brew event at the Ballard Community Hall, and I was terrified. Sabrina had begged me not to cancel, reminding me how much Grandma Lucille meant to her. But deep down, I wondered if showing up would make anything better or only open old wounds. Pulling into the lot, I parked next to rows of craft beer trucks and salmon slider food stalls. Fairy lights draped over reclaimed wood tables, and the faint strum of an indie duo drifted from inside. Sabrina unbuckled Luna, who blinked awake with curious eyes. "Be careful," I whispered as Luna toddled toward a low planter. Before I could catch her, she stepped onto the curb and nearly tumbled into the street. Sabrina lunged, scooping her up just as a delivery van roared past. My pulse tripled. Luna looked at us wide-eyed, then giggled, oblivious to the danger. In that moment, all pretense of calm shattered. Protecting her felt more urgent than any family feud. We entered through double doors, greeted by the gallery's latest exhibit, abstract paintings in rich blues and grays, interspersed with dramatic sculptures. Grandma Lucille, leaning on a carved oak cane, glowed under warm spotlights. Her art dealer eyes twinkled when she saw us. "There you are," she exclaimed, pressing a plate of wild berry tart into Sabrina's hand. I hugged her, noting how small she seemed, but how fierce her presence still was. She introduced us to a smiling bartender pouring hazy IPA and to the guest of honor, Cynthia Hayes, my mother standing at a ribbon strung across the stage. Cynthia, in a sleek charcoal blazer, raised a glass. "Welcome, everyone, to my 58th art beer community. What more can you ask?" Her voice was warm, but steel lurked beneath the surface. I murmured thanks and guided Sabrina toward a high-top table. Luna, clutching a tart, toddled ahead. Someone called her name and she spun, nearly spilling her treat on an expensive canvas. I caught her just in time but felt Sabrina's glare. I should have held her tighter. The hall buzzed with old neighbors, tech execs, artists, and a sprinkling of community leaders. Tyler, my younger brother, now a paramedic for Seattle Fire, approached with Olivia, his wife, who works at Starbucks HQ. Tyler's uniform shifted him from rescuer to family envoy. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Glad you made it big, bro." Olivia's smile looked practiced. I caught her whisper to Tyler as she passed Sabrina. "Still, no second kid." Her tone was casual, but the barb felt like an ice pick to Sabrina's ribs. Sabrina winced, eyes darting toward Cynthia, who stood triumphantly near the ribbon. I intercepted Sabrina before she could reply. "Let's grab a beer, okay?" We edged through clusters of guests, heading to the bar, where Victor Nguyen, the retired Navy SEAL uncle we all trust, poured us a pint. Marisol Reyes. My Aunt Marisol stood beside him in a floral dress, speaking softly in Spanish to a small group about the exhibit's symbolism. She placed a gentle hand on Sabrina's arm. "Recuerda, eres fuerte," she said. Sabrina managed to smile, grateful for the comfort. But even Aunt Marisol's kindness couldn't dissolve the cloud gathering over us. Dinner bells chimed, and servers guided everyone to long banquet tables set under Edison bulbs. Plates of cedar plank salmon, roasted potatoes, and organic greens appeared amid soft jazz. Luna crawled onto Sabrina's lap, her tiny hands reaching for broccoli. Sabrina fed her careful to offer bites that Luna might actually eat. Across the table, Robert Hayes, my father, avoided eye contact, scrolling through his phone. His nervous glance at Cynthia said everything he feared, both her wrath and any hint of family discord. Cynthia rose, tapping her glass. "Thank you all for coming. Art and family both shape us. I'm proud to celebrate another year of life in this amazing community." Applause rippled. Sabrina inhaled, shoulders tensed as Cynthia's gaze flicked to us with an inscrutable smile. Then, almost offhand, she asked, "So, Sabrina, how long have you and Marcus been married now?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sabrina's throat tightened. I forced a reassuring squeeze on her hand under the table. 6 years, Sabrina said quietly, voice barely above a whisper. A polite murmur followed, but Cynthia's lips curved into that familiar half-smile. 6 years and still no second little one. A hush fell. The jazz band halted mid-syncopation. Luna looked up puzzled at the sudden silence. Somewhere between the tables, Olivia stifled a giggle. Sabrina's face drained of color, her hand shook around Luna's fork. I felt my jaw clench. Our private struggles, years of acupuncture appointments, IVF cycles, egg freezing, all lay invisible here yet. Cynthia's words cut through as if she held each painful detail in her hand. A bead of sweat traced down Sabrina's temple. I could see her chest rise and fall with effort as she fought the impulse to stand and shout. All I managed was a tight smile. My knuckles whitened around my napkin. The soft glow of the Edison bulbs suddenly seemed harsh, exposing every anxious flicker in Sabrina's eyes. My mind raced. Should I confront her now in front of everyone, or wait for a less public moment before I could decide? Cynthia's next words froze my blood. I just worry Marcus might be next, growing old without grandchildren to carry on our name. A murmur rolled through the hall. Somewhere a chair scraped. Sabrina's lips parted to speak, but a sudden blood-curdling crash echoed from the buffet. A server had tripped, sending a tray of glasses upending onto the polished floor. Bullion-colored beer splashed across the patterned rug, and heels skidded. In that fractured moment, all eyes flicked from the spill back to our table. Sabrina blinked, torn between helping the server and seizing the moment to answer her mother-in-law. I stood abruptly, chair sliding backward, ready to protect Sabrina from the next verbal strike. But before my feet could move, Cynthia laughed a cold, practiced sound and raised her glass again. Well, here's to unexpected surprises. The ice in my veins solidified. As I took a step, Luna slipped from Sabrina's lap, toddling off toward the spill glass shards glinting. Time slowed, and every breath caught in my throat. We were seconds away from disaster, both for Luna's safety and for the words hanging in the air. The room held its breath. I lunged forward, heart hammering, as splintered glass and brewing fury converged. Would I save Luna in time? And what price would I pay for speaking out? Marcus lunged across the banquet table, my heart a drum in my ears as my hand shot out to scoop Luna from the jagged shards of glass. The plates and cutlery clattered to the floor in a dizzying chorus, the indie duo's melody grinding to a halt. For a moment, time froze. Luna's wide eyes locked onto mine, the pale glow of the Edison bulbs reflecting in her tearful pupils. I wrapped her in my arms, feeling the slick warmth of spilled beer on her tiny shoes, her ragged breath pressing into my chest. Sabrina was at my side before I even registered movement, her fingers trembling as she smoothed back Luna's hair and pulled her close. I could taste the metallic tang of fear and adrenaline on my tongue. Guests rose from their seats, murmurs rippling through the hall like a storm. But all I saw was Cynthia's face, an elegant mask cracking with amusement. I stood cradling Luna, facing my mother-in-law across a battlefield of toppled chairs and broken glass. The guests' chatter dimmed to an uneasy hush. Tyler and Olivia hovered behind me, their expressions unreadable. Tyler's brow knit in concern. Olivia's lips curving in a smirk, as if our misfortune amused her. Robert, my father, sat frozen, phone forgotten, as if unable to choose between reprimanding his daughter or facing Cynthia's wrath. Then, cutting through the tension, Victor Nguyen, my uncle and once a Navy SEAL, stepped forward, his boot heels clicking on the hardwood floor. He gently took Luna from my arms and placed her safely on Sabrina's lap, his calm presence anchoring the chaos. "She's fine," Victor announced, voice low but carrying across the room. "Everyone take a breath." The guests complied, shifting uneasily in their seats, the sharp smell of spilled beer and burnt sage rising from an unswept corner. Cynthia raised her glass, porcelain-skinned and unruffled. "Well," she said, voice crisp as autumn air that was quite the intermission. Laughter trickled around the room, nervous, half-hearted. Sabrina's face was pale, eyes bright with unshed tears. She clutched Luna's hand as if grounding herself to reality. I felt my knuckles white around my napkin, the burn of anger rising from my chest to my throat. "Intermission," I choked out. My daughter almost got hurt. Every syllable landed like a hammer blow. Sabrina looked at me, pleading silently through her tears to stop. But I couldn't not when Cynthia treated a potential tragedy like a spectacle. A bead of sweat traced my temple as I realized how many eyes were on us, the weight of judgment pressing on my shoulders like a lead vest. Before Cynthia could retort, Grandma Lucille hobbled to the center of the room, her oak cane tapping a staccato rhythm on the floor. In her gallery, she commanded attention better than any painting. She laid her free hand on the banquet table, knocking over a wooden pepper grinder with a startling crack. The hush deepened. Enough her voice rang aged but unwavering. The crowd flinched. Cynthia's lip curled, but Grandma didn't waver. "This is my hall, my celebration, and my family," she said, eyes sweeping the assembly. "No one endangers a child here, no matter how entertaining you find the outcome." Her glare cut through the air. Even Olivia went still, her smirk faltering. Cynthia straightened, adjusting her blazer as if preparing to pounce, but Grandma held up a hand. "You will apologize to Sabrina publicly right now." The gallery lights seemed to dim the canvases behind Grandma, taking on a new somber weight. Gasps rose around us. Servers froze mid-step, beer trays tilting. Tyler gripped Olivia's arm. Even Robert raised his head, eyes darting between his mother and his wife. Sabrina's shoulders shook. She looked at me, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Marcus." I squeezed her hand, nodding. If Grandma was this resolute, there was no turning back. Cynthia's cheeks flamed, but instead of apologizing, she laughed, a brittle, high-pitched sound that scraped like nails on glass. "You can't be serious," she said, voice quavering slightly. "Apologize for what? For living my life? Making my own party?" Her laugh echoed hollowly. Behind her, the ribbon stretched taut across the stage, the symbol of her grand entrance, now a taut wire ready to snap. In that moment, the room felt electric. The symbol of the ribbon became a fault line, snap it, and the party, the family, everything would fracture irrevocably. Grandma's cane tapped twice, slow and deliberate. "Apologize," she repeated, voice ice. "Or you and your accomplices gather your things and leave my property in the next 72 hours. A tremor ran through Cynthia's composure. Murmurs swelled into a roar, some guests shifting to leave, others rising in support of Grandma's demand. Sabrina pressed Luna close, and I could see the fierce pride flicker in her eyes, mirrored by Marisol stepping forward to translate Grandma's words into Spanish for the small group of Hispanic artists near the back. Tyler glanced at me, lips set in a firm line, ready to back us up. Cynthia stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a trapped bird. Olivia edged toward the exit, dragging Tyler with her, despite his efforts to stand his ground. Robert rose slowly, his legs trembling. He met my gaze, regret and fear swirling in his eyes. The air was thick with tension, the gallery lights glinting off broken glass like unhealed wounds. In a final, defiant breath, Cynthia's eyes narrowed. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the indie duo resumed their chord, a discordant note that reverberated through the hall. Grandma's eyes flicked to the musicians, then back to Cynthia, a silent warning. The ribbon above Cynthia's head quivered, and in that suspended second, I felt the weight of history of all the weddings, graduations, birthdays that had passed through this hall pressing down on us. The door to the alleyway behind the hall banged open, and a blast of cold Pacific wind gusted in scattering napkins across the floor. I looked over my shoulder. The security guard summoned earlier by a worried server stepped in, eyes wide as he took in the standoff. He cleared his throat, glancing first at Grandma, then Cynthia. "Ma'am, if there's going to be an eviction?" he said, voice professional but uneasy. "We need to coordinate it with management." The guests tensed again. Sabrina's fingers tightened around Luna's tiny hand. I swallowed hard, my throat raw. The guards' arrival underscored the reality this wasn't just a family spat. It was a legal ultimatum unfolding in real time at Cynthia's own celebration. Cynthia stood motionless, her face an impossible mask. For a heartbeat, I thought she might relent. Then she took a step forward, gaze locked on Grandma. "You wouldn't," she whispered. The security guard's walkie-talkie crackled. Grandma's eyes burned. "Try me." Echoes of that promise hung in the air as the indie duo struck the first gentle chord of a lullaby, the broken glass at our feet glittering like shattered dreams. Sabrina leaned in, her voice a whisper I felt in my chest. What now? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the next move would change everything, our family, our home, our future, and the only certainty was that there was no turning back. The valet cart rattled behind us as we stepped out of Ballard Community Hall into the crisp Seattle air. Luna clung to Sabrina's hand, her little boots crunching on gravel. The broken glass and scattered napkins still lay like fallen confetti, a raw reminder of Cynthia's cruelty and Grandma's ultimatum. Sabrina gathered Luna in her arms, rocking her gently as she whispered, "We're safe now," though her voice quivered. I slipped an arm around both of them, feeling the weight of the night press into my chest like a stone. Behind us, guests slipped away in clusters, casting wary glances at Cynthia's stiff silhouette by the ribboned stage. She stood very still, face set, as if daring Grandma to enforce her threat. I closed my eyes and exhaled through my nose. This battle was far from over. The drive home was silent, except for the hum of the engine and Luna's soft breathing from the back seat. I watched Sabrina in the rearview mirror, her gaze fixed on the dark road ahead. Her shoulders rose and fell with each breath, a fragile dancer in the dim glow of passing streetlights. I wanted to say something soothing, something that would erase the sting of Cynthia's words and the memory of Luna's near fall. But I knew there were no simple comforts left. Instead, I reached over and held Sabrina's hand, our fingers entwining like lifelines. Under her thumb, I felt the faint throb of tears she'd wiped away. We didn't speak again until the Fremont exit loomed, and Luna stirred blinking sleep from her big brown eyes. At our front door, a single porch light cast long shadows across our mid-century facade. Inside, Luna padded ahead to her playpen where her stuffed fox waited. Sabrina and I sank onto the couch, the night's adrenaline ebbing into exhaustion. Sabrina dialed Grandma Lucille. When Lucille's warm voice crackled through the speaker, "My dears, how are you?" Sabrina's composure crumbled, tears spilling as she thanked her. I listened in silence to Grandma's gentle rebuke of Cynthia's behavior. A mother who belittles another woman's dreams has lost her way. Then she reminded us, "This struggle doesn't define you. Love does." Her words wrapped around us like a blanket. We promised to stay strong and hung up. The house felt emptier without Luna's quiet sniffles. We stood in the living room holding each other, absorbing Grandma's strength like sunlight after a storm. The next 48 hours passed in a tense quiet. At the Microsoft campus, I stared at lines of code that refused to compile, my mind replaying the glint of broken glass and the hush that fell over the hall. My teammates nudged me at lunch jokes about the big birthday blowout, but I forced polite smiles. Sabrina returned to the special ed classroom at Lake Washington SD, where she guided a nonverbal student's hand to paint a rainbow. She masked her ache with patient corrections and soft encouragements, but I saw the tremor in her fingers when she set down the brush. Each evening, we sat together on the porch, Luna asleep in her crib inside. We drank chamomile tea in silence, our thoughts tangled in the aftermath. Olivia's smug text, "Hope you're okay after last night," sat unanswered on Sabrina's phone. Neither of us had the heart to reply. On the third morning, our phones buzzed at the same time. "Please come to Ballard Studio 2 p.m., read Grandma's text. No explanation, just a time and place. I felt a jolt, an electric reminder that the 72-hour countdown was ticking. Sabrina's eyes met mine steel in her gaze. We packed Luna into her car seat and drove the familiar 15 minutes over Aurora Bridge. The narrow street by the gallery was empty, save for Grandma's teal Subaru parked by the curb. Inside, the lights were low and the canvases took on midnight hues. We found Cynthia and Tyler standing near the entrance, their silhouettes sharp against the pale lobby walls. Cynthia's posture was defiant, arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed. Tyler hovered behind her paramedic jacket, unzipped his hands, shoved in pockets as if bracing for conflict. A hush fell as we entered. Grandma Lucille sat in her carved oak chair at the far end of the gallery, beside her a sleek mahogany desk, where attorney Karen Chang from Perkins Coie LLP adjusted her glasses. In her charcoal suit and polished loafers, Karen looked every bit the embodiment of legal authority. I felt Luna fidget in my arms, then placed her on Sabrina's hip. Luna buried her face in Sabrina's shoulder. Grandma's cane rested against the desk like a gavel waiting to fall. "Thank you for coming," she said, quiet but commanding. The gallery's silence amplified her words. Sparks of morning light filtered through the skylights, illuminating every dust mote in the air like tiny witnesses. Karen stood, clearing her throat. "Mrs. Hayes," she began, voice calm, "we're here to formalize the 72-hour notice as Mrs. Lucille Hayes requested." The finality of formalize hung in the air. Sabrina swallowed hard, her coffee-colored eyes wide. Cynthia's lips tightened into a pale line. Grandma nodded to Karen. "Before we proceed," Grandma said, "I'll ask again. Apologize to Sabrina now and in front of everyone present." The ribbon from Cynthia's party still hung draped across a nearby sculpture, an abstract steel ribbon that now felt like a noose. Catherine's eyes flicked briefly to the ribbon, then back to Cynthia. The room was a tableau of tension, Cynthia's stiff posture, Tyler's fidgeting, Robert's trembling phone in his hand. Cynthia lifted her chin. "I refuse," she said, voice low but firm. "I owe her no apology. If I leave, so be it." A gasp rippled through the small crowd of gallery staff peeking around corners. I saw Marisol step forward, her hand brushing Sabrina's arm in solidarity. Karen opened a legal folder, retrieving a crisp envelope stamped Notice of Lease Termination. She slid it across the desk. "By order of Mrs. Hayes, you and any occupants must vacate Ballard Studio and associated property within 72 hours. The word vacate echoed like a judge's gavel. Tyler's jaw clenched. At his side, Olivia's lip quivered. Robert stepped forward, phone clutched so tightly his knuckles whitened. Cynthia's eyes darted to the envelope, then to Karen, then to Grandma. "You can't do this," she whispered, voice cracking. My pulse thundered in my ears. Sabrina wrapped an arm around Luna, who peeked over her shoulder, confusion in her wide eyes. Grandma leaned forward, voice steady as ice. "This house, this gallery is mine. I decide who stays and who leaves." She tapped her cane on the floor twice. I watched Cynthia's facade fracture, the proud birthday queen reduced to a woman who might lose everything. Karen placed a video camera on the desk, its lens whirring softly. "This recording ensures compliance," she said. The camera's red light blinked, casting a glow like an ominous heartbeat. Cynthia bolted upright, her voice rising. You're ruining my life, my home, my family." Her cry ricocheted off the walls, knocking paint chips from the canvases. Tyler stepped forward, eyes pleading, but Grandma simply stood, cane clicking, as she took a slow, deliberate step toward Cynthia. "You left me no choice," Grandma said, voice unwavering. "Now you must face the consequences." The final word landed like a hammer against our ribs. I felt the room tilt, reality shifting. Live streams, Facebook posts, eviction paperwork, it all converged in this charged moment. Sabrina's hand found mine, squeezing with determination. Luna clung to Sabrina's hair, sensing the storm. As the camera recorded every silent standoff, I realized this was more than eviction. It was a declaration that respect and love hold power even when wealth and entitlement falter. But would Cynthia bow to Grandma's will? Or would she summon some last-ditch rebellion? The lens glowed steadily. The ribbon hung limply behind her, and in that pregnant pause, the next move felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. My heart thundered what would happen when the 72 hours ran out. The morning sun slipped through the tall glass windows of Ballard Studio, casting long, pale beams across spilled coffee stains and overturned chairs from yesterday's showdown. Cynthia Hayes stood by the coffee machine, arms crossed, eyes darting toward the back office door, where Attorney Chang's notice of lease termination still lay on the mahogany desk like an accusation. Tyler hovered beside her uniform, crisp, but worry etched in the lines at his temples. Olivia leaned against the counter, arms folded tight, phone in hand, already clicking through rental listings on Zillow. The room felt charged, the air heavy with unspoken panic. Luna's laughter from the Hayes Collins home fleet still echoed in my mind, a reminder of what we stood to lose if Cynthia didn't act fast. "I'm not moving," Cynthia hissed, voice low but fierce. She slammed her hand on the counter, rattling the espresso cups. "This gallery has been in our family for 2 generations. Lucille can't just sell me out." Tyler's jaw clenched. "Mom, the notice is legal. We have 72 hours. If we don't comply, security could physically escort us out." Olivia rolled her eyes. "Or we can play it smarter, stay put, claim hardship, eviction, drag this through appeals. You know the courts hate to leave an 82-year-old homeless." She smirked, but Cynthia shook her head. "I'm not hiding behind the law. We face them head-on, show up, refuse to leave, and hope public opinion swings our way." Her gaze flicked to the door. "We need the kids out of here, too." She gestured at a back room where 2 small murals painted by Luna months earlier hung on cracked drywall. As Cynthia rattled off plans, court motions, social media campaigns, heartfelt pleas to friends at the Puget Sound Arts Council, I edged closer to the doorway. My heart pounded like a drum. The injustice of watching women I once trusted scheming to cling to a place that wasn't theirs gave me no choice. But before I could step in, Grandma Lucille's soft footsteps sounded behind me. She stood in the open doorway, cane in hand, her gallery smock splattered with yesterday's berry tart. Her eyes were sharp as polished obsidian. "I think I've heard enough," she said, voice calm, but carrying the weight of 82 years. Cynthia whipped around, panic flickering across her face like storm clouds. "Grandma," she began, but Lucille's gaze never wavered. "I moved here after Grandpa died because this place matters to me." "Not to you," Grandma said, stepping fully into the room. The sunlight caught the silver in her hair, haloing her head like a battle flag. "You call that staying put? That's called stealing memories." Tyler took a half step forward, but his mother lifted a hand, silencing him. "You have 3 options. Apologize to my granddaughter's mother, pack up and leave quietly, or face the fact that I own this building outright and you never will again." She lowered her voice to a whisper only they could hear. "I prefer the first." Then she turned on her heel and swept out of the room, leaving the 3 of them frozen among the espresso cups and overturned chairs. Grandma's words hung in the air like smoke. Tyler exhaled sharply. Olivia shoved her phone in her pocket. Cynthia's face paled. The veneer of confidence cracked. They looked at each other, eyes filled with desperation. I slipped back, closing the door quietly behind me. The clicking of Grandma's cane faded down the hallway, but the echo of her ultimatum stayed with me as I crossed to the front windows. That evening, under a silvering sky, a bright blue for sale sign appeared outside Ballard Studio. Its bold letters stared back at Cynthia like a gauntlet tossed. I watched from my car as Hassan Patel, our friend and top broker at Windermere Real Estate, parked his Volvo across the street and strode up to the signpost, toolkit in hand. He knocked the old sign loose and hammered in the new one, complete with pending sticker already peeling into place. His eyes flicked to the window. He saw me and gave a small nod, but not a friendly one. It was the nod of an executioner confirming the end of a life. Inside the gallery, Cynthia burst through the front door, her heels clicking like high-pitched alarms. "Hassan." "What is this?" she demanded, voice trembling. He didn't meet her gaze. He straightened the sign and said, "The house closed at 2:15 p.m. Buyer's financing just finalized. I list and I seal." His accent hinted at miles traveled to reach Seattle. His tone hinted that he'd seen similar betrayals before. Cynthia's face drained of color. Tyler and Olivia appeared behind her faces, ashen. They exchanged a glance that said everything they'd assumed Grandma's threat was hot air. I entered behind them, my coat still damp from a sudden drizzle. The receptionist's desk was empty, all staff long gone. Cynthia turned to me, fury and fear swirling in her eyes. "Marcus," she spat, "you've lost your mind. You engineered this." I folded my arms, heart thundering. "Your own mother sold the studio out from under you because you refused to apologize." Sabrina's words from last night echoed in my head. Love does. This was love manifest, Grandma protecting her legacy, our family's home, a haven for art and children. Cynthia's mouth opened, but before she could deny it, a black Lexus pulled up at the curb. The car door opened, and a sharply dressed man in his mid-40s stepped out, briefcase in hand. He glanced at the sign with a satisfied smile. "Hassan called me, just closing today." "Impressive." His Chicago accent rolled across the silent street. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a framed check stub, the final payment. Cynthia's knees wobbled. Tyler's eyes darted to the signature. It was Grandma's neat and deliberate Lucille Hayes. The weight of those two words pressed on Cynthia like a tombstone. The Lexus driver set down the briefcase, its metal clasp clicking shut. "I own this now," he said, voice smooth as polished marble. "I plan to convert half into condos, half into gallery space." "Perfect location." He turned to Cynthia, nodding once. "Congratulations, you're out." Then he looked at me and Sabrina, his gaze kinder. "I'll honor Ms. Hayes' legacy by hosting your art shows and charity events here." My breath caught. A swell of triumph and relief flooded me. Grandma not only evicted Cynthia, she ensured our community could still gather here. Sabrina's grip on my arm tightened. Luna, watching from the window, clapped small hands. But Cynthia's fury erupted, then she lunged at the man, knocking his briefcase to the pavement. Papers flew like wounded birds. "You can't do this. I'll sue you for breach of inheritance," she screamed. The man bent to retrieve his documents, wiping a smudge of dirt from the contract. "You had your chance to apologize," he said, rising steadily. "Now it's legal. Good day." He climbed into the Lexus and drove off, leaving Cynthia collapsed on the gallery steps, tears streaming. In the hush that followed, Tyler knelt beside her, trying to comfort his mother. Olivia stood motionless, her marketing pitch lost in the rain. I stepped forward, scandal coursing through my veins, and placed my hand on Cynthia's shoulder. "It's over," I said softly. Her head lolled back. She looked at me with a mixture of hate and disbelief. Grandma's blue Subaru glided into view and Lucille stepped out, umbrella in hand. She surveyed the scene, sign car, scattered contracts with a quiet satisfaction. Then she approached Meadows' huge steel sculpture at the gallery entrance, her favorite piece, 2 twisted ribbons of metal entwined. She tapped one ribbon with her cane. "This gallery is a symbol," she said, voice firm. "2 paths can wind together, but only when both respect the shape." Her gaze found mine and Sabrina's. "Thank you for standing by me." She pivoted to Cynthia, cane raised like a conductor's baton, and said, "You had your chance to choose love over entitlement. You chose poorly." Then she turned and walked back toward her car, leaving Cynthia kneeling in the rain, the pending sign gleaming behind her like a judge's order. As the Subaru's taillights faded, I felt the twist of justice settle in my chest. The studio, our sanctuary, had been sealed away from those who sought to poison it. But the echo of Cynthia's screams and Tyler's despair followed us down the walkway, mingling with the patter of raindrops on the ribbon sculpture. I looked at Sabrina, rain-soaked but resolute, and knew this victory came at a price. The battle lines were drawn not only in real estate deeds, but in hearts. As Grandma's car disappeared around the corner, Luna tugged my sleeve and pointed at the twisted ribbons. "Pretty," she said, voice small. But to me, they had become a warning even steel can bend, and the next twist might come from within. The notification came late that night, a flashing red badge on Sabrina's phone that dragged her from sleep. She squinted at the Seattle Family Ties app, 1.5 million members, all tuned in to Cynthia's latest post. Her heart sank as she tapped the video shaky footage of our front porch drenched in rain, Luna clutching her fox plushie while Tyler's voice rattled off dramatic claims about being kicked out of Grandma's house. Olivia's camera swung to Cynthia, tears streaming, then panned to our former gallery sign, now replaced with pending sale. The final shot lingered on Luna's quivering lip as she whispered, "Where will we live now?" "Daddy." Sabrina pressed a hand to her mouth, jaw trembling. I reached for her wrist, feeling the tremor in her pulse. Our daughter's innocent question echoed like a verdict the world had already judged us guilty. Within minutes, comments exploded beneath the post, hundreds of thousands of eyes condemning us as manipulative villains. Strangers demanded we return the money or shame on you for using kids. A coworker texted Sabrina in the morning, "Is this really you in the video?" Her classroom felt colder that day, each glance from parents laced with pity or suspicion. At Microsoft, I fended off awkward half-smiles at the cafeteria and whispers in the hall. My inbox overflowed with strangers' threats and pleas for justice. The algorithm fed our crisis back to us on every screen. Ads for free legal advice popped up beside tearful memes and angry hashtags. The symbol of a smartphone became a gallows. Every ding was a new accusation, every scroll a fresh wound. We retreated to our cozy Fremont living room, Luna asleep in her crib, the glow of the city beyond our window. Sabrina sat beside me on the couch, hugging her knees to her chest. "They've taken everything," she whispered, voice brittle. "Our home, our dignity, even our daughter's safety." I felt anger surge, rage at my own family for weaponizing their children, at strangers for piling on, at the algorithm for turning our private pain into public spectacle. But beneath the fury lay determination. We couldn't let lies stand unchallenged. I thought of Grandma's words, "Love does." This was love's reckoning. "We need to tell the truth," I said quietly. Sabrina met my gaze, tears shining but resolve firm. "We'll do it together." The next morning, we sat at our kitchen table with Karen Chang on speakerphone. Her voice was steady, professional. "This is textbook defamation. You have clear evidence, screen grabs, original video witness statements. I'll draft a cease and desist and a lawsuit, but first we need a public correction. A video statement posted under the original thread will show you're not afraid of the truth." She outlined costs, filing fees, court dates, potential damages. My stomach clenched. We weren't wealthy tech execs. Lawsuit expenses loomed large. Karen offered a payment plan and reminded us justice in America isn't just for the rich. With solid proof, you have the upper hand. Her confidence bolstered us. We gathered printouts of Cynthia's post, screenshots of comments, even Olivia's rental search texts. Each paper felt like a stepping stone toward redemption. That afternoon, sunlight poured into Ballard's studio through the skylights, illuminating the polished wood floors where we once walked free. Grandma Lucille waited for us by the twisted ribbon sculpture, her oak cane leaning against the pedestal. She clasped our hands in both of hers, warm, unwavering. "Tonight," she said, "we tell the world what really happened." Beside her, Aunt Marisol set up a small camera on a tripod, ensuring sound and lighting would capture every word. Uncle Victor adjusted the microphone, his Navy SEAL calm a steady anchor. Sabrina smoothed her hair. Luna perched on her hip, fingers entwined in her braid. I checked the frame. Marisol's pastel paints in the background, the for sale sign, now overgrown with moss outside the window, a testament to endurance. This setting symbolized rebirth. The place they tried to steal had become our platform. As dusk deepened, we stood before the lens. The city's lights blinked on behind us, a constellation of hope. Sabrina inhaled, exhaled, then pressed record. Grandma Lucille's voice broke the silence. I am Lucille Hayes, owner of this gallery. I watched Sabrina's eyes glisten as she prepared to share our story. Luna yawned, nestling closer. In that moment, the camera became more than a device. It was our shield and sword. The red recording light glowed steadily, half promise, half challenge. My heart thundered, would the truth drown out the lies, or would we be swallowed by an even louder chorus? We were seconds away from pressing post. And in that pregnant pause, every breath felt like the hinge on which our futures would turn. We hit publish just after midnight. The gallery lights dimmed behind us as Grandma Lucille pressed share on her phone. I watched the red recording light blink off and held my breath. Sabrina's voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. I'm Sabrina Hayes, and this is the truth. Luna yawned against her shoulder, oblivious to the cameras. For the first 2 minutes, the chat was silent. Then a single thumbs-up emoji floated up. Then another. Within seconds, thousands of hearts flooded the screen. Comments scrolled past, justice. Thank you for your courage. Family loyalty is sacred. My chest tightened with relief and disbelief. Could so many strangers really see our side? By dawn, the algorithm had picked up our live-streamed statement on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Notifications pinged like raindrops on a tin roof, supportive DMs from neighbors, coworkers, even old friends who'd vanished since college. The hashtag #HatterHayesTruth trended locally. I scrolled through screenshots of our evidence, screenshots of Cynthia's original post. Olivia's rental listing texts, Tyler's children's faces manipulated for clicks, every lie exposed. Sabrina's phone lit up with invitations to radio interviews and calls from community leaders offering support for our defamation suit. I felt a swell of pride in her. The woman who'd been silenced for years was now speaking for countless couples who'd suffered behind closed doors. That afternoon, I sat across from Karen Chang in her cozy Perkins Coie office filing the complaint. The polished oak table held stacks of affidavits, Victor's sworn statement about the birthday party, Marisol's signed translation logs, our video transcripts. Karen explained the path forward, a motion for damages, and an injunction to remove Cynthia's video. We have a strong case, she said, eyes kind but determined. Cynthia and Tyler knowingly defamed your family. The law is on your side. My fingers traced the edges of the complaint form like an anchor. Let's do it, I said quietly. Sabrina squeezed my hand under the table. Luna's stuffed fox peeked from her diaper bag at our feet, a small silent witness to our fight. The next morning, as I carried Luna to the car, I spotted a familiar SUV parked in our Fremont driveway. Cynthia's Lincoln Navigator, dark windows tinted like secrets. Sabrina gasped, dropping Luna's car seat latch. They can't be here. I rushed past the hydrangea's, heart slamming. At our front door, Cynthia stood flanked by Tyler and Olivia, rain-damp curls clinging to her cheeks. Tyler's uniform jacket drenched from a sudden downpour, Olivia's designer bag slick with droplets. Their faces were masks of desperation and false grace. Behind them, Luna's small footprints led from the driveway to our doorstep, a breadcrumb trail of innocence they were about to trample. Cynthia's voice cracked as I reached for the lock. Marcus, Sabrina, wait, please. My hand froze on the deadbolt. Tyler swallowed, glancing at the door camera blinking on the frame. Olivia's lip quivered. We came to talk. Sabrina placed herself protectively in front of Luna's car seat, eyes fierce. We're not talking, she said, voice low. Cynthia's shoulders sagged. She glanced at Tyler. We'll delete the post. We'll apologize everywhere. Just drop the lawsuit. I'm begging you. Her words fell like rain on broken glass, sharp, dangerous, unpredictable. Tyler added, voice trembling, Mom, sorry. We can settle this quietly. No court, no more public shaming. Olivia nodded, twisting a strand of hair. We just want our home back. I stepped forward, rain beating on my shoulders. The door's peephole blurred with droplets. "You weaponized your own children," I said. "You slandered Sabrina. You gave Grandma no choice." My voice shook with anger and grief. Luna fussed behind me, the sound like a heartbeat in the storm. Cynthia's eyes welled. We didn't mean to hurt her." "Too late," Sabrina cut in. "The damage is done." The rain intensified, pattering on the porch like a countdown. Tyler glanced over his shoulder as headlights appeared at the end of the block, flashy red and blue strobes painting the street. Olivia gasped, clutching Cynthia's arm. "Oh God, they called the police." I looked at the approaching patrol car, siren silent but lights spinning. The symbol of authority, blue and white, lit Cynthia's tear-struck face. She sank to her knees on our welcome mat, rain soaking her blazer. Tyler reached down, pulling her up. Olivia's mascara ran in rivulets as she whispered, "Please." The officers stepped onto the porch, badges glinting under the awning. One cleared his throat. "Evening. We received a disturbance call. Everything okay here?" The world narrowed to that question. The thunder of our breaths. Luna's small cry from behind. Sabrina tightened her grip on Luna and turned to me, eyes wide with fear and resolve. I met her gaze. In that split second, I realized this confrontation was more than legal. It was moral, spiritual. Our boundary had been crossed. As the officer's flashlight beam swept across Cynthia's rain-soaked face, my pulse thundered in my ears. The next choice would define us: compassion or retribution, forgiveness or justice. And as the storm swirled around us, the front door stood between two worlds, one of chaos, one of sanctuary. I glanced at Sabrina, at Luna, at the rain-spattered police cruiser, then back at Cynthia, kneeling in the mud. The threshold trembling beneath our feet, I held my breath, waiting for the officer to speak and for my heart to decide. The patrol car's red and blue lights faded as the officers led Cynthia, Tyler, and Olivia off our porch. Luna's soft cry drifted through the open door as I knelt to scoop her into my arms, her damp curls sticking to my chin. Sabrina closed the front door behind them, the click of the lock sounding like a final punctuation. We stood in the entryway, soaked from the rain, watching their silhouettes through the frosted glass as the navigator pulled away. Relief washed over us in slow waves, our home, our sanctuary had held. 2 days later, we sat in the lobby of the King County Superior Court, the marble floors gleaming under fluorescent lights. I felt Sabrina's hand squeeze mine. Luna nibbled on her fox plushie at our feet. Attorney Karen Chang flipped through a thick binder of affidavit screen grabs of Cynthia's defamatory post, Olivia's rental app texts, Victor's witness statement. "We're ready," Karen said softly. The symbol of the gavel carved on the courtroom door loomed ahead like justice incarnate. Inside the courtroom, the bench rose like an altar. Our small entourage, Grandma Lucille in her powder blue cardigan, Victor in crisp civilian clothes, and Aunt Marisol, with Luna perched on her hip, filled a side pew. Across the aisle, Cynthia sat with Tyler and Olivia, shoulders hunched, faces pale. The judge, a stern woman with wire-frame glasses, peered down at us. "Case 2025 DEF 0452, she intoned. "Hayes versus Hayes. Let's proceed." Karen presented our opening. Cynthia had published false claims that Marcus and Sabrina coerced Lucille into selling her home, weaponized their child for profit, and stomped on family bonds for money. Our evidence was airtight: Cynthia's own rental listing texts, the date stamped for sale sign photo, the live stream transcripts. Then Uncle Victor took the stand. His posture, straight and unwavering, reminded me of the stories he'd told of SEAL missions, discipline, honor, integrity. He described the 58th birthday party, the broken glass incident, Cynthia's first cruel jabs. Each word carried weight. The courtroom hung on his every syllable. Next came Aunt Marisol. With Luna in her arms, she recounted, translating Grandma's Spanish apologies, how Lucille had granted Cynthia 3 days to own her mistakes. But she refused, Marisol said, voice steady. And then she plotted to cling to property that wasn't hers at the expense of a vulnerable child. Marisol's bilingual testimony underscored a deeper cultural ethos in every family. Respect for elders and compassion for the young are sacred American values. Then the defense rested. Cynthia's lawyer tried to frame her actions as concern over an inheritance protecting family legacy, but the judge's gaze was unyielding. When Karen delivered the closing argument asking the court to affirm that defamation has consequences, especially when it exploits children, the gavel's echo seemed to hum with agreement. The verdict came 3 weeks later on a crisp Monday morning. We returned to the same courtroom, now filled with supportive faces, local gallery owners, Sabrina's school principal, even a couple of my Microsoft colleagues. The judge peered over her notes. The court finds in favor of the plaintiffs. Defendants are ordered to pay $12,000 in damages and $8,000 in legal fees. The original post must be removed with a public apology within 7 days. Her voice resonated like a bell. Quiet applause rippled through our side of the room. Sabrina exhaled, tears of relief glistening. I felt Grandma Lucille squeeze my hand from the pew behind, her eyes shining with pride. That afternoon, word spread, Cynthia and Tyler were ordered to vacate Lucille's old studio by month's end, and the defamation judgment stood. The for sale sign outside the gallery, once a symbol of loss, now felt like a monument to justice. As we walked out, the Everett skyline glinted in the distance, a reminder of fresh starts across Puget Sound. 2 days later, Robert Hayes, our father, quietly signed divorce papers at the King County Family Court. I received a text from him. "I'm free now." His trembling emoji spoke volumes. He left the courthouse clutching a coffee cup, eyes unburdened for the first time in decades. The next morning, Grandma Lucille placed a gentle call, "I want to help your father start anew." I felt gratitude pour into my chest. That weekend, Grandma invited us to her Ballard bungalow for a private gathering. We circled around her sun-drenched living room where her art pieces, bold abstracts, and serene landscapes filled every wall. She cleared her throat, her presence commanding yet warm. "My family," she began. "I've lived long enough to know that forgiveness doesn't mean blind loyalty, it means holding people accountable. Now I want to set things right." She unveiled a spreadsheet on her laptop, $250,000 trust for each of her great-grandchildren, Logan and Zoe Hayes, to be held at Beckview until they turn 18. $200,000 set aside for Robert to help him rebuild after his divorce. $2.1 million for Marcus and Sabrina to secure their future and Luna's and any future children. And $200,000 reserved for Grandma's own care because even matriarchs need a safety net. The numbers trembled on the screen like fragile hopes, then steadied as she clicked save. Tears pooled in Sabrina's eyes. Luna reached for Grandma's hand. Victor and Marisol exchanged proud smiles. "This is how love protects," Grandma said. "Not by sheltering people from consequences, but by giving them the resources to heal." The sun flickered through her skylight, spotlighting her silver hair like a crown. A month later, Grandma moved into our Fremont Homes guest suite. Her gallery sold, her legacy secured. She settled into a rocking chair on our porch, knitting blankets as Luna chased butterflies in the yard. Robert visited twice a week, his divorce complete, each time lighter, telling Luna stories of kayaking on Lake Washington and teaching her to fish. Then one crisp March morning at Pike Place Market, Sabrina pulled me aside between clam stalls and coffee carts. The neon public market center sign glowed behind her as she held up a small strip of paper, the positive line on a home pregnancy test. "Marcus," she whispered, tears of joy shining. My pulse raced. My hand shook as I slipped the test under her nose, the proof of new life. She was 6 weeks along. Around us, street musicians played a hopeful tune, baskets of flowers swayed in the breeze, and I felt our family's hard-won peace crystallize into hope. We decided to keep the news close, just Grandma and Robert knew. Months later, Grandma hosted a small celebration in our sunroom, cinnamon rolls, chamomile tea, and a carved wooden sign reading, "Next Chapter." She toasted to the baby on the way and to the resilience of love. I watched Sabrina's hand rest on her belly, her smile serene. Robert wiped a tear and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Even Luna offered a proud hug. Then just yesterday, the story came full circle. I was edging the stroller out to the driveway when I saw a familiar sedan idling by the curb. Cynthia's Lincoln, its paint dulled by Seattle drizzle. My chest tightened. Sabrina Dusk robed her blouse and slid behind me, placing a gentle hand on my arm. Cynthia stepped out, umbrella in hand, face drawn and older. She walked up the walkway with cautious steps. I felt Luna's small hand at my leg, the stroller's wheels crunching concrete. Sabrina's eyes flicked to me, hope and fear warring across her features. Cynthia raised shaky hands, voice cracking. "I want to apologize to you, to Luna, and to the baby." She swallowed rain dripping off her umbrella. "I was wrong. I've lost everything, but I need to make things right." Luna peeked over the stroller, curiosity bright in her eyes. Sabrina's mouth parted, compassion flickering. I inhaled the scent of spring blossoms from our planter box. Grandma Lucille's knitting chair sat empty on the porch, its blankets folded neatly, a silent witness. My heart thundered forgiveness or self-preservation. As Cynthia's apology trembled in the rain, I met Sabrina's gaze. She nodded once, a silent plea. But in my chest, I felt the steel of resolve tempered by love. I took a step forward and Luna giggled, holding her fox tight. And then I whispered the words that would shape our family's future story. I'm Rosa Delgado, 27, the daughter who learned invisibility before multiplication tables. When I was 8, my mother Alma warned me that quiet girls survive storms. I tried, yet the thunder in our house never cared whether I whispered or shouted. The lightning always struck me first. My brother Mateo, 29, was born under a double rainbow, according to Dad's favorite anecdote. Maybe that's why he shines while I rust. Mateo's trophies crowd the living room shelves. My college diploma lives in a box beneath the staircase next to Christmas lights that never work. Last Monday should have been forgettable. I'd finished a double shift at Treasure House Thrift, my skin smelling of mothballs and pine cleaner. Rain soaked my only pair of decent flats. All I wanted was a hot shower before crawling into my twin bed. Instead, I found Mateo's private spa night in progress. Scented candles burned on the vanity Latin pop thumped from his Bluetooth speaker, and every plush towel was gone. He'd locked the door from the inside, then left through the hall window so the steam wouldn't set off the fire alarm. He also removed the cold water knob. The first blast scalded my shoulders. I screamed, slipped, and slammed my knee into the porcelain tub. Water hissed like oil in a pan. I twisted the lone handle, nothing but boiling punishment. By the time I yanked the shower curtain down and used it as a shield, red blotches already spread across my arms. Mom peeked into the hallway, mascara perfect, at midnight. "Rosa, keep it down. Your brother's prepping for tomorrow's TV interview." "Interview," I gasped. "For his food truck collective Cariño. Channel 7 is filming at dawn. He needs rest." My skin bubbled, but Mateo needed rest. Dad Rodrigo appeared behind her phone in hand. "Put some aloe on it," he advised, without meeting my eyes, already scrolling for the weather in case the film crew required umbrellas. Then they both vanished, door clicking shut, leaving the hallway dark and humid. I patched myself with the last of my expired aloe gel, counted my breaths, and refused to cry. Crying is an RSVP to their pity party, and I'm never on the guest list. Morning after. At sunrise, I limped into the kitchen for coffee. Mateo strutted in wearing a tailored jacket the color of fortune. He noticed the blisters peeking from my sleeve and chuckled. "Should have waited your turn, little sis. Hot water's for winners." Mom laughed too loudly, like an audience cue card told her to. Dad signed a delivery receipt for 3 boxes of wireless microphones rented. He assured Mateo all on my credit card for points. I frowned. I've never owned a credit card, just a chipped debit that squeals at grocery stores. Dad waved a shiny Visa in the air, my name, his handwriting. "Relax, mija. It helps the family score travel miles. You don't even make enough to use the limit. My stomach dropped further than the card's interest rate. Mateo patted my cheek. "You'll thank us when we all fly to Cabo to celebrate my franchise deal." There, under the buzz of the fluorescent kitchen light, I understood the storm I'd been born into wasn't random weather. They built it. And they kept it roaring by feeding it my silence, my credit, my skin. That moment split me open. Pain seeped out, and something colder seeped in resolve. I smiled so wide my cheeks trembled. "Cabo sounds amazing," I said. Mom beamed, relieved that her fragile harmony was restored. Mateo grabbed his microphone boxes, already planning sound bites about hustle culture and family support. They didn't know I'd spent the night on the thrift store computer after closing, idly searching my own name out of wounded vanity. I'd found a new entry on my credit report, Delgado Dining Concepts LLC co-owner, Rosa Delgado. A high-interest business loan approved 2 weeks prior. My forged signature glared at me in pixelated ink. Mateo wasn't satisfied stealing my hot water. He'd stolen my financial future too. The reporter outside, currently praising his self-made ascent, had no clue that his seed money grew from my identity. I watched through the window as the news van arrived. Mateo strutted beside it, greeting the anchor with the grin of a man convinced the universe owes him applause. He didn't glance back at me. Why would he? Porcelain cracks never interest anyone until a vase finally shatters. A seed of strategy. By noon, I'd iced my burns and rummaged through Dad's filing cabinet while the family accompanied the TV crew downtown. Among utility bills and expired warranties, I found the loan packet, notarized papers, forged consent forms, even a fake email address using my name. Sloppy. Mateo always outsources the tedious parts of brilliance to the nearest target. I scanned everything into my phone, then slipped the originals back. On a hunch, I checked Dad's desk drawer for spare keys. Instead, I discovered 4 more credit cards, all in my name, all maxed to the brim. Airfare, food truck paint jobs, deposit on a riverside commissary kitchen, interest ticking like a bomb I'd never set. I didn't slam drawers or rip paper. Drama entertains them. Quiet calculation terrifies narcissists far more. I simply opened a fresh spreadsheet listing every fraudulent charge, every signature mismatch, every lie. Then I Googled Illinois identity theft restitution and SBA loan whistleblower rewards. The links gleamed like escape hatches. By the time the family returned, Mateo glowing from newfound fame, parents fawning over cameo shots, I'd prepared 3 polite emails. To the bank's fraud department attaching scans of forged documents. To the local SBA office flagging misuse of pandemic relief funds. To Channel 7's investigative desk teasing a story about a culinary darling built on stolen credit. But I didn't hit send, not yet. Revenge tastes best after it's rested like slow-cooked carnitas. I'd let Mateo enjoy his spotlight long enough for the audience to really adore him. Then I'd flip the lights. I fell asleep that night listening to the rain hammer our roof, each drop a countdown click. In the silence between storms, I pictured Mateo's next interview, handcuffed, not mic'd. And for the first time since childhood, the thunder sounded almost gentle. I woke Tuesday convinced the air itself was thinner, as if the house sensed my new intent and clutched its breath. Mom hummed in the kitchen, scrambling eggs for Mateo's victory brunch, while Dad balanced ledger sheets he didn't understand. They barely nodded when I limped past, so I kept my smile small and filed away every careless detail. The storm they'd nursed for years was still raging, but now I carried a compass. At 9 sharp, I slipped out, claiming an early thrift store shift. Instead, I headed to Mad Bean Cafe, a cramped place that smells of burnt espresso and overheard secrets. Kayla Torres, 26. My cashier coworker, turned reluctant co-conspirator, waited in the corner booth. She'd heard my rant the night of the scalding incident and offered her hacker cousin's services before my coffee cooled. Today, she came wielding a memory stick and nerves of twine. "Your family's network is childproof," she whispered, sliding the drive across the table. Default router password, no firewall. I pulled invoices, bank transfers, even a selfie Mateo took with the loan officer. He geotagged it. I almost laughed. My brother loves two things: hashtags and other people's money. Kayla's eyes darted. You sure you want to burn them? No exit ramp once we light the match. I'm past exits, I said, thumb tracing the blister on my forearm like a sworn oath. We agreed on next steps. She'd store redundant backups. I'd handle the human chess. The human piece I needed next was Mr. Lin, 62, the retired forensic accountant who rents the upstairs duplex. He spends afternoons on his balcony feeding sparrows and reading court dockets for fun. I showed him the forged loan papers, careful to keep my voice level. He adjusted wire rim glasses, scanning signatures, then exhaled through his teeth. Classic affinity fraud, he muttered. Family ties used to bypass scrutiny. Prosecutors love these. He outlined a timeline: freeze cards, file, police report, alert, small business administration, then wait. But if you also want narrative justice, he added, control the reveal. Public sentiment decides how hard agencies swing the hammer. Narrative justice that rang like gospel. So that evening, while my parents fussed over catering quotes for a splashy investor dinner Mateo had scheduled Friday, I drafted an anonymous tip to Carmen Reyes, Channel 7's investigative bulldog. Carmen cut her teeth, exposing City Hall bribes. A phony food truck mogul would be dessert. I ended the email with a teaser video Kayla stitched together, Mateo bragging on live stream about self-funding intercut with screenshots of my maxed cards. I hit send pulse drumming and felt the house creak as though it heard me commit the sin of disobedience. Wednesday blurred into strategic patience. I went to work, priced dusty lamps, and practiced small talk with customers so my voice wouldn't crack later. Between transactions, I watched Mateo's social feeds inflate. First franchise opens in 3 weeks, family is everything. Each post harvested likes that would soon sour into disbelief. Mom forwarded the links to extended relatives, typing strings of sparkle emojis. Dad updated his LinkedIn headline to COO Delgado Dining Concepts. None of them noticed the quiet subtraction underway. I had already frozen the forged visa and disputed every purchase. The bank promised callbacks. Collection emails began boomeranging to Mateo's inbox instead of mine. Little tremors before the quake. Thursday morning, Mr. Lin tapped on our side door, eyes bright. Check the city website, he whispered. A public notice revealed that Delgado Dining Concepts' health inspection was rescheduled. Anonymous allegations of falsified safety records required immediate review. Mateo stormed through the hallway seconds later, phone glued to ear, shouting about jealous competitors. He didn't question how the notice printed my legal name as co-owner. He simply assumed I'd fix it like always. I nodded, took the paperwork, and made a mental note. Arrogance is the softest underbelly. That night, Dad cornered me while Mom rehearsed dinner toasts. Your brother depends on us showing unity, he said, voice slick with practiced authority. Sign this affidavit stating you approved the loan. He thrust a pen forward. My heartbeat slammed, but my smile stayed. Of course, Papa. I just need to read it carefully. I folded the sheet, slid it into my pocket, and walked away before the tremor in my hands betrayed me. Upstairs, I scanned the document to Kayla, then shredded it into confetti that glittered like tiny nose. Friday arrived cloaked in July heat. Our living room transformed into a showroom, rented crystal floral arches, a banner reading Delgado Dynasty from Street Eats to Empire. Investors trickled in, wearing linen and expectant grins. Mom hovered, offering sangria. Dad bragged about projected margins. Mateo, glossy-haired and glowing, circulated like a crown prince. I wore a navy dress that hid my bandages and kept my phone tucked against my palm, waiting for Carmen's cue. At 7:30, the doorbell rang again. I opened it to find Carmen and her cameraman press badges visible. Ms. Delgado, ready to go on record, she asked. Her smile was sympathetic, not predatory, and that almost undid me. I nodded once, stepped onto the porch, and in one breath told the lens everything: the forged signatures, the hijacked credit, the boiling water, the lifetime of being collateral. Inside, laughter dimmed. Through the window, I saw Mateo pause, confusion rippling across his face as Dad's hand fell from an investor's shoulder. Carmen pushed past me into the foyer. The cameraman followed. Questions flew like hail. "Mr. Delgado, why is your sister's name on 6 delinquent accounts, sir? Did pandemic relief fund your personal travel?" Investors backed toward the door, wiping their hands as if cleanliness could outrun scandal. Mom's voice cracked, searching for spin, but words tangled. Dad tried blame, Rosa misunderstood, yet the camera loved contradictions. Mateo reached for me, pleading in a hiss. "We're family. Delete the footage and we'll fix this." I looked at my blistered arm, then at Kayla, who'd slipped in unnoticed, live streaming the chaos to our thrift store followers. "Family doesn't remake you into collateral," I said loud enough for every microphone. The room fell into stunned silence, broken only by the whir of the camera lens focusing on Mateo's shocked eyes. Police didn't arrive that night, but the investors left. The banner sagged, and Mom slumped against a wall, mascara smearing like ink in rain. Mr. Lin escorted Carmen out, promising supplementary files. Kayla squeezed my hand before disappearing into the streetlights. I inhaled shakily. The storm had broken, but aftermath carries its own thunder. As I climbed the stairs, Dad called after me, voice small. "Mija, where will you go?" I paused, feeling the weight of every quiet year. "Anywhere the air feels honest," I said, and kept climbing. In my room, I opened the window wide. The July night smelled of wet asphalt and beginnings. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, reporters, maybe courtrooms, but for the first time, the horizon felt like mine to choose. I curled onto the mattress, listened to distant sirens, and realized they sounded almost like applause. Morning cracked open with siren blue light bouncing off news vans parked like vultures along our curb. My phone buzzed, nonstop alerts, interview requests, strangers tweeting gifs of Mateo's stunned face. I brushed my teeth to the rhythm of a headline anchor repeating identity theft sibling scandal and felt oddly weightless. Truth had vacuumed out the lies, leaving spare, clean air. Downstairs, the living room looked like a banquet hit by a tornado. Wine rings on crystal wilted roses, the banner drooping in silent confession. Dad sat on the sofa, tie loosened, scrolling through plummeting stock tickers linked to Mateo's investors. Mom knelt beside a broken goblet, collecting shards with bare fingers as if she could reassemble yesterday if she worked fast enough. Neither spoke when I entered, but I felt their questions throb in the space between us. Before they could form words, the doorbell rattled 3 urgent times. 2 uniformed officers and Detective Serena Patel, 36, stepped in. She carried a leather folder and an expression sharp enough to slice excuses. "Ms. Delgado," she greeted, nodding toward me first, then turning to Mateo, who shuffled in wearing sweatpants and last night's cologne. "We have questions regarding fraudulent SBA loans and credit accounts." Mateo's bravado flickered. He opened his mouth closed. It settled on a shrug. "Lawyer uptime." Dad cleared his throat, reaching for old authority. "Surely we can handle this privately." Serena raised an eyebrow. "That's above my pay grade, sir." Privately ended when Channel 7 aired footage watched by half the county. She handed me a victim rights brochure, then asked if I had a safe address for future correspondence. "I do," I answered, voice steady. Upstairs with Mr. Lin, we'd converted his spare room into a paper fortress, labeled with pastel sticky notes, evidence timelines, restitution statutes. As officers escorted Mateo to the porch for formal notice, Mom finally spoke, voice ragged. "Rosa, we're family. Families heal in private." I remembered hot water skin blisters, forged credit, and decades of hush, and replied, "Healing needs light, mama. This is mine." I turned before tears blurred my focus. Mr. Lin greeted me with jasmine tea and new discoveries. Overnight, he'd traced wire transfers leading from Mateo's business account to Crane Horizon Capital, a venture fund infamous for burying losses in shell companies. The name at the signature line, Lucas Crane 40, reputation, predatory angel investor who clips wings for sport. Your brother's fraud is ugly, Mr. Lin said, tapping a spreadsheet, but Crane makes it federal. That afternoon, Serena returned for a follow-up. She studied the flows Mr. Lin charted and whistled low. If Crane's involved, the case widens money laundering tax evasion. Justice will move, but it's slow. Meanwhile, he'll try to intimidate you. As if summoned, my phone pinged. Unknown number. A single photograph of me at age 16, eyes swollen after my first anxiety attack, captioned, "Drop the charges or relive every weakness publicly." Beneath the text emoji. Fear iced my spine, but anger thawed it fast. I showed Serena. She photographed the screen. Classic pressure tactic. Keep everything. We'll trace the tower ping. Still, a tremor lingered. Secrets, my panic disorder hospital visit, my scholarship probation, things I'd buried with silence now dangled like marionettes. Kayla arrived carrying a cardboard box and a grin. Good news, thrift store manager loved the live stream, says sales tripled. He promoted me to floor lead and gave you a paid leave of absence. She set the box down inside fan mail. Sticky notes, handmade bracelets, letters from viewers thanking me for standing up. One read, "Your courage made me freeze my abuser's credit card. Validation tasted sweeter than any apology I'd never receive." By evening, legal documents multiplied across Mr. Lin's dining table. We filed to sever my name from Delgado Dining Concepts, requested a fraud alert on my social security number, and drafted a civil suit for damages. Dad called 4 times, voicemail cracking between anger and pleading. I saved each message for the evidence folder. At midnight, exhaustion crept in. I stepped onto the balcony. Downtown lights shimmered like distant campfires. Mateo's window below was dark, but I pictured him scrolling through hate comments surfacing in a world suddenly shrunken. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt an ache. Revenge doesn't cauterize history, it only exposes the wound to air. Saturday brought a new twist. Carmen Reyes aired a follow-up piece revealing Crane Horizons' pattern of funding startups, then coercing founders into debt traps. My brother, the perfect mark. The segment ended with anonymous sources suggest a whistleblower within the Delgado family provided regulators with fresh evidence. Comment sections exploded sympathy for me, mockery for Mateo, outrage at Crane. Within hours, Lucas Crane's lawyer emailed a cease and desist to my junk folder demanding we retract defamatory claims. Mr. Lin laughed softly. Always interesting when snakes threaten before they bite. Detective Serena arranged a safe house option, but I refused to disappear. Instead, I donned a simple blazer and with Kayla as backup walked into Channel 7's studio for a live panel on financial abuse. My hands trembled backstage until the red tally light flashed. Then words poured like river water. I spoke of silent daughters, invisible debts, the heat of scalding water that woke me. Viewers flooded the station with donations to an anti-fraud nonprofit Carmen promoted on air. Lucas Crane replied via press release, labeling me an emotionally unstable sibling seeking 15 minutes of fame. I thanked him on Twitter for spelling my name right. Likes soared past 50,000. That night, I met Mateo in the driveway under flickering streetlight. He looked older, eyes ringed with sleepless purple. "I might go to prison," he whispered. "Dad says you can still retract." I studied the brother who once hid my stuffed rabbit so I'd chase him laughing. "You can help yourself," I said by testifying against Crane, returning every dime and apologizing without a single excuse. He scoffed. "You'd watch me beg, I'd watch you grow," I corrected, turning away. Behind me, gravel shuffled, but no apology followed. As dawn bled pink, Mr. Lin handed me an envelope court date set and a provisional restitution figure that could finance a fresh life. "You're winning," he said. I exhaled, realizing victory meant rewriting what family meant, maybe building one from allies instead of blood. I texted Serena ready for next round. She replied with a thumbs up and a tiger emoji. Yet I sensed Crane's shadow creeping. Later, an unmarked sedan idled outside the duplex engine humming. I noted the license plate, sent it to Serena. Minutes later, a second text arrived from the unknown number. You've chosen the long war. Wars claim collateral. A chill stilled the night air. I closed the curtains, but my resolve stayed open, bracing for whatever storm Crane conjured next. The idling sedan returned Sunday at dawn, headlights off, engine purring like a cat too patient to pounce. I watched from Mr. Lynn's lattice curtain and forced myself to breathe in counts of 4, an old therapist trick to keep panic from becoming prophecy. Kayla brewed coffee strong enough to solder nerves. We can't outstare a car, she muttered. She was right. Fear grows teeth in stillness. I texted Detective Serena the plate again with a timestamp, then dressed for church, even though I hadn't prayed in years. If Crane wanted surveillance footage, he'd get hymns and holy water. Inside, St. Isidore's incense curled around wooden beams, dimming everything into soft sepia. I slipped into the back pew, heart jackhammering. Halfway through the homily, a tall woman in a charcoal blazer sat beside me. I recognized her from Carmen's newsroom, Valerie Chen, 31, producer, known for busting corrupt judges. She didn't open a Bible, just a slim notebook. Crane drives that sedan, she whispered behind her palm. He employs ex-military drivers to avoid direct liability. My pulse skipped. Valerie continued. Carmen sent me. We're digging into Crane's offshore holdings. We need a witness who will testify that threats were made. I echoed her words. Threats were made. Saying it out loud felt like etching stone. Valerie nodded, once passed me a burner phone. Use this only for evidence drops. Your main line's likely cloned. Then she left, melting into the aisle before choir voices rose. Outside, the sedan was gone, replaced by a delivery van plastered with an ice cream logo too cheery for January heat. I ignored it. Let them waste gas. Back at the duplex, Mr. Lynn studied satellite maps marking all Crane-owned properties. Pattern says he'll lean on your parents next, he warned. I stiffened. Mom and Dad had built their cage, but they didn't deserve Crane's wolves. Seconds later, Mom called, voice quivering. 2 men came asking for Mateo's repayment schedule. They said you'd signed collateral. Her panic bled through the receiver. I told her to stay indoors and keep records, then forwarded the call log to Serena. Late afternoon brought our first counterpunch. Serena arranged a meeting with Assistant U.S. Attorney Dominic Reyes, 42. Carmen's older brother, coincidence, turned advantage. In a sterile conference room, Dominic laid out the federal charges he planned: wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering, conspiracy. But we need Crane's internal emails, he said, steepling fingers. Kayla grinned, producing a flash drive. Rosa's hacker network delivers. She wasn't bluffing. Her cousin had breached Crane's Slack workspace during their lunch break. Dominic's eyes widened at the trove memos boasting cook the books, and a staff memo joking Delgado girl is our personal ATM. He scheduled a grand jury presentation for Thursday. The Long War just found its battlefield. That night, the power cut out across our block. Street lamps died, plunging windows into mirror black. I reset the breaker twice before realizing the line was severed. My phone lit up with the burner's single message, "Feel the darkness sign and it ends." I typed back, "Darkness teaches eyes to fight harder." The message bounced, number disconnected. In the silence, Mr. Lynn fetched camping lanterns. Even their glow felt defiant. We spent hours printing duplicate case files, sealing them in waterproof envelopes labeled "For every outcome if I disappear, send to Dominic." Paranoia became protocol. Monday surfaced with sirens, not police, but fire trucks. Flames clawed the thrift store's alley, dumpster smoke curling above the roof like a black flag. Investigators ruled arson within the hour. Accelerant traces matched a compound favored by military demolitions. Kayla hugged me, ash streaking her cheeks. "They're aiming at memories now," she said. We salvaged what we could, a chipped picture frame, her grandmother's brooch, the scent of char swimming in our hair. When reporters arrived, I faced cameras again, voice calm as cooled steel. "Burning trash won't erase receipts," I stated, lifting a folder of notarized evidence. #stand with Rosa trended by noon. Crane finally emerged publicly Tuesday via a glossy press conference from his skyscraper lobby. He denied wrongdoing, blamed rogue associates, and painted himself as mentor betrayed by an ungrateful family. His closing line, "I forgive Ms. Delgado." Forgiveness wielded as dagger. Carmen aired the clip beside footage of the burnt dumpster. Public sympathy swung my way like a door on greased hinges. Yet the legal maze tightened. Mateo's attorney proposed a plea testify against Crane in exchange for reduced sentence and restitution payments to me. Serena advised acceptance. Dominic agreed. I met Mateo in a windowless interview room, fluorescent lights buzzing like flies. He looked deflated, suit 2 sizes too big, bracelet cuff jangling. "I sign, I lose everything," he said. I answered, "You lost everything when you made me collateral. This is how you start earning it back." He stared, tears pooling, then nodded. Pen met paper. Fate shifted. Wednesday dawned with unexpected kindness. Anonymous donors funded a pop-up market for thrift store vendors displaced by the fire hosted in the church basement. I volunteered at the door, greeting strangers who recognized me from news clips, yet treated me like neighbor, not headline. Community warmed spaces fear had tried to freeze. That evening, Valerie dropped a bombshell. Crane owned a shadow holding company tied to offshore accounts, laundering profits from at least 3 other SBA-backed businesses. Emails suggested he planned to skip the country once Mateo folded. Dominic fast-tracked an arrest warrant. "We grab him Friday," he promised. My knees weakened. Friday felt both too near and light years away. Crane sensed the net. Thursday after midnight, a brick shattered Mr. Lynn's front window. Glass rained onto his chessboard. Attached note, "Last chance." We called police. Fingerprints lifted none on record. Still, the act felt sloppy, desperate. Fear shrank a notch. Predators claw hardest before cages close. Friday morning came wrapped in fog. Federal agents surrounded Crane's penthouse by 7. I watched the live feed on Valerie's tablet suits, storming gilded doors, Crane in handcuffs, designer robe fluttering. Cheers erupted in the church basement where volunteers gathered. Relief spread through my chest, warm, heavy, almost painful after days of ice. But victory demanded vigilance. That night, Serena cautioned trials crawl. He'll hire sharks, spin narratives. I nodded. Wars end in treaties, not televised arrests. Still a corner turned. Mom called, voice soft as decade-old lullabies. "Mija." "I'm proud of your courage," she whispered. Dad added a muffled, sorry, the word rusty, on his tongue. Bridges can't rebuild overnight yet. The first plank had been laid. I stood on the duplex balcony, city lights blinking Morse code possibilities. Mateo faced sentencing. Crane awaited arraignment, and my credit score still smoldered, but the air finally felt honest, like I'd promised. I texted Kayla. "We fight until the ink dries." She replied with a phoenix emoji, rebirth born from ash. The city woke Saturday to headlines hotter than the August pavement. Venture tycoon Lucas Crane denied bail, whistleblower. Sister prepares to testify. I sipped lukewarm coffee at Mr. Lynn's kitchen table, letting each article hammer home that the war had pushed inside courthouse walls. Dominic Reyes arrived before noon, sleeves rolled, eyes ringed by strategy. He laid a trial schedule atop our evidence mountain. Grand jury, true bill secured, arraignment. Monday, preliminary witness order, mine, then Mateo. My stomach somersaulted, but I nodded. Truth had carried me this far. Oath-bound truth would finish the run. Afternoon sunlight skipped across manila envelopes as we rehearsed. Serena framed questions crisp as origami, financial timeline, forged signatures, the scalding shower that sparked resolve. Dominic drilled follow-ups until my answers sounded less like pain and more like fact. When dusk shivered in, he clasped my shoulder. Jurors remember stories, not spreadsheets. Tell them the heat of stolen water. I tucked the advice next to courage. Sunday courthouse steps swarmed with cameras. Protesters held Protect Small Biz Funds placards. A lone countersign read, "Crane, Eol's visionary, let him work." Kayla flanked me phone, ready for any digital sabotage. Valerie slipped a press badge through security and winked. Inside marble corridors ricocheted footfalls. The arraignment lasted minutes, plea not guilty bail motion, objected judge, citing flight risk and intimidation pattern. Crane's jaw clenched as marshals cuffed him again. He passed me eyes like frozen tar, yet the stare bounced off the shield of public light now blazing around me. Outside reporters peppered me with questions. I kept it simple. This is about accountability, not vengeance. The soundbite went viral anyway. That night, Mateo called from county lockup, monitored line 30 seconds. "I'm reading Dad's old chess book," he said, voice raw. "It says the Queen's power is space." "You took the board, Rosa." I swallowed hard. "Queens defend the vulnerable," I answered. Silence, then a soft, "Thank you." The line clicked dead, yet something between us felt faintly mended. Monday testimony day. The courtroom smelled of old paper and new nerves. Oak benches creaked with civic curiosity. I raised my right hand, pulse drumming in my wrists. Dominic's questions guided me across years like stepping stones. I spoke of invisible childhood, boiling water, forged debts, and the moment courage outweighed fear. Crane's attorney's slick hair, pinstriped ego rose for cross. He leaned on buzzwords, instability, family feuds, attention-seeking. I met his gaze steady. "Silence is cheaper for abusers," I said. I chose an expensive voice. Murmurs rippled. Judge's gavel hushed them. Mid-cross. Valerie texted Dominic a file. He slid a tablet to the bench, audio of Crane ordering the brick attack, time-stamped voice unmistakable. Defense sputtered, requested recess. Judge denied. Jury eyes widened. Momentum shifted like tide. When Mateo took the stand, he confessed every forged signature, pointed to Crane as orchestrator, then turned to me. My sister saved more than my future. She saved my conscience. Tears blurred my sight, but cleared some long-fogged corridor of the heart. Court adjourned, trial proper slated for autumn with plea negotiations looming. Outside, Mom waited, clutching a paper bag. She pressed it into my hands, tamales still warm. I learned she whispered, "Quiet girls survive storms, but brave women disperse them." Dad stood beside her, apology etched in posture, if not yet words. We shared an awkward, hopeful half-smile, like builders eyeing rubble and imagining frames. That evening, Dominic confirmed preliminary restitution, bank reversing fraudulent charges, SBA approving victim compensation. Crane assets frozen pending verdict. Part of the funds would rebuild Treasure House thrift. Part would seed a scholarship for survivors of financial abuse. Community boards lit with volunteer offers. Justice, it turned out, could multiply like loaves and fishes when transparent. Yet freedom demanded constant tending. Spam calls morphed into deep-fake videos splicing my face onto outrageous rants, an attempt to smear credibility. Kayla's hacker cousin traced servers to a disgraced PR firm linked to Crane's hedge fund cronies. Valerie published the receipts before dinner. Smear campaign evaporated like smoke. Late Wednesday. Mateo's public defender sent me a letter. He'd requested transfer to a rehab entrepreneurship program inside state prison, hoping to teach accounting classes to inmates. I reread the line. Sister's example of restitution inspires me until tears smudged ink. Healing. I realized might look nothing like fairy tales, more like scarred skin knit, sturdier than before. Thursday sunrise painted the duplex in apricot light. I walked to the church basement where the thrift pop-up thrummed with life, neon scarves, refurbished radios, children bargaining with pocket change. A volunteer handed me a badge founder. I pinned it over my heartbeat. Mr. Lin tinkered with a donations ledger humming. Serena dropped by with fresh intel. Crane's lawyers exploring plea to avoid a longer sentence. Your consistency cornered him, she said. Consistency, daily mundane courage felt less cinematic than revenge, yet infinitely richer. Night settled warm and cricket loud. I stood on the duplex balcony city humming below. Mom texted a selfie she and Dad at a financial literacy workshop hosted by the nonprofit my case had funded. Small steps, but steps forward. I inhaled July air, tasted lavender from Mr. Lin's planter, and understood the war's final battle would be deciding what to build in the cleared space. I opened a new document titled Phoenix Market Cooperative Mission Empower Marginal Voices Through Microloans and Mentorship. Kayla agreed to handle operations. Valerie offered media guidance. Serena volunteered legal workshops. Even Dominic pledged pro bono filings. Community forming not from blood, but chosen kin stronger because forged by intention, not accident. Before bed, I messaged Mateo. Board is yours when you want to play fair. 3 dots flickered, then learned my lesson. Hold the seat. I smiled, unsure what tomorrow's verdicts would bring, yet certain my story now belonged to me, lines no one else could forge. September drifted in on cinnamon breezes and courtroom calendars. Lucas Crane, cornered by evidence and public wrath, finally folded. He entered a broad plea wire fraud intimidation conspiracy, trading indictment roulette for 10 federal years and a restitution order topping $7 million. Cameras flashed as marshals led him away, his designer cuffs swapped for stainless steel. I watched from the gallery beside Valerie and Kayla. The gavel sounded less like punishment and more like a deep, resonant drum announcing harvest season after a long drought. Half the settlement would go to government coffers, but the rest funneled to victims' small business owners whose dreams he'd pickpocketed my own credit repair fund and the new Phoenix Market Cooperative. Mateo's sentencing followed a week later. Judge Sinclair weighed his cooperation addiction counseling and 35 character letters, many from vendors he'd once underpaid, who now vouched for his newfound humility. He received 3 years in a monitored halfway program, work release hours earmarked for bookkeeping classes inside county shelters. As he left the courtroom, he met my gaze, lips shaping a single word, gracias. It wasn't absolution, but it sounded like bricks being lifted from both of us. Life after headlines felt strangely quiet, like a theater after final curtain when ushers sweep forgotten popcorn. Quiet, I learned, is fertile. Every Saturday, the church basement transformed into Phoenix Market, rows of reclaimed wood stalls, string lights, humming smells of turmeric soap and beetroot empanadas. We issued microloans from the restitution pool, $200 here for a seamstress's second machine, $500 there for a teen coder's laptop upgrade. Borrowers repaid in sales percentages. Default rates hovered near zero because dignity proved stronger collateral than any cosign. Mom became our unofficial greeter, offering warm tamales and even warmer anecdotes about learning to read bank statements. Dad ran the loading dock muscles, earning the soreness he once outsourced to my silence. Some Saturdays he'd pause, eyes glossy, then pat my shoulder as though words might splinter the fragile miracle of us working side by side. Detective Serena taught quarterly workshops on scam red flags. Dominic coached vendors on tax basics. Mr. Lin consulted for free blue penning budgets while birds outside the window scavenged crumbs from his biscuit stash. Valerie filmed mini-documentaries featuring each merchant's origin story, clips that racked up views and donations worldwide. Kayla, now operations director, kept a bell on the checkout counter. Every time it chimed for a purchase, she'd grin at me and say, "That's the sound of storms dispersing." One crisp evening, Mateo arrived on a 6-hour pass carrying a box labeled inventory. Inside lay ceramic mugs he'd wheel-thrown during rehab classes, each etched with storm clouds on one side and a tiny sun on the other. He named them Forecast Series Chaos to Clarity. Vendors gathered, curious. He cleared his throat, voice shaky. "I stole futures. Today I'm selling vessels for fresh starts. The mugs sold out within an hour, and I watched him make change with careful fingers as if each coin were a fragile apology. Healing wasn't linear. Some nights I woke sweating, hearing phantom shower hiss or phantom engine idle. But I'd open the window, breathe city air now scented with food truck cilantro rather than fear, and count blessings like beads, warm tamales, market bells, a brother learning honesty, parents learning respect, a community inventing itself. The anxiety still visited, but now I greeted it like an old teacher. Thanks for the lesson, class. Dismissed. On the first anniversary of the scalding incident, Phoenix Market hosted a block party fundraiser. A local jazz trio volunteered. Kids painted murals of phoenixes rising over thrift store skylines. At sunset, I stood on a makeshift stage microphone, trembling in my palm. I spoke simply how a pot of boiling water had once felt like destiny, how courage can be contagious, how justice is less a lightning strike than 1,000 steady matches passed hand to hand. Cheers washed over me, not the roaring approval of spectators, but the warm applause of partners in the ongoing work of bettering each other. When the music swelled, Mom pulled Dad into a dance, their laughter scattering like bright confetti. Mateo joined a conga line of vendors. His ankle monitor blinked beneath rolled cuffs, yet couldn't dim the grin on his face. Kayla clanged the sale bell just for rhythm, while Mr. Lin tapped foot and Sergeant Serena spun Valerie under string lights. I closed my eyes. The echo of freedom sounded exactly like this mingled racket, horns, tambourines, soft singing, and the rustle of canvas stalls in a downtown breeze. Later, as the crowd thinned and volunteers stacked chairs, I slipped away to the rooftop of the duplex. City lights shimmered like distant campfires again, but tonight I felt no chill. I texted Mateo board is still ours. He replied with a photo of the queen chess piece perched on a mug captioned space secured. I laughed out loud, a clean ringing sound traveling into night sky. I thought back to Alma's quiet girls survive storms. Maybe survival had been enough for a girl. For the woman I'd become, survival was the floor, not the ceiling. I wanted symphonies, markets, second chances, and a peace loud enough to sing by. The wind flipped a loose sheet of paper at my feet, one of Phoenix Market's pamphlets. I tucked it into my pocket, a tangible note to self-destiny can be rewritten and printed on recycled stock. As midnight bells tolled from St. Isidore's, I whispered a new prayer, equal parts gratitude and promise. May every silent daughter find her expensive voice. May every storm reveal a compass. May every phoenix remember the fire once hurt but also forged wings. Below the faint ding of Kayla's bell floated upward one last time, a lullaby made from coins, courage, and community. In that sound, I heard everyday music, and I knew the story, my story, would keep writing itself one honest note at a time.